I don't know if you guys were watching Tata Steel today, but Anish Giri played an amazing game in the Queen's Gambit against Gukesh D, just smashing him with a crazy sacrificial attack. Very instructive game, especially if you're playing the Karakon D4 course, because this is a line that could totally transpose. They got there through a different move order than we do, but this could definitely transpose into something that we play. Let's dive in, take a look. So we get just sort of this normal sort of like Nimzo and Nin start, and this is where they deviate and get to what we play through a different move order. And he starts with knight f3, avoiding the Nimzo. We play knight c3, allowing the Nimzo, mostly because d5 is an idea, and we want to be able to play the exchange variation. So they continued on d5 now, and knight c3, and already this bishop out to g5, and now h6, and now bishop takes f6. And this is probably the first move that maybe looks a little bit weird to you guys. But this is actually kind of a key idea to take this knight here and not drop back to h4, which feels a lot more natural. And the point is that this can allow some pretty tricky stuff. For example, just one possible line is g5, and we drop the bishop back to g3, and now knight e4 comes, and this bishop is already slightly uncomfortable. Say we play queen to c2 because we have pressure here and we needed to do something about this. But now h5 is a pretty cool idea. And we're forced to play h4, and we were threatening to get our bishop trapped. So for example, if we made sort of a careless move like rook to d1, h4, and if we play bishop e5, then already just f6, and we've got to give up the bishop. Instead, that's why h4 is played. And now g4, kicking our knight. Our knight's got to move, and black can take here. We take back with the pawn, and this is still an equal game. There's a very, very, very tiny pool for white here, but this is just clearly not everybody's cup of tea and not the kind of position that everybody wants to play. Plus, this isn't the only line, and maybe not even best play for black. So for this reason, we're taking here, giving up this bishop for the knight, which you think kind of would lead to like a soft position, maybe not something we're super excited about. But queen takes, and now e3, and now rook c1, or sorry, castles, and we bring the rook to c1. And this is a nice instructive point. We don't really want to take back with the pawn necessarily, especially when black has played d5, because we want to capture here at some point. We don't want to do it yet because that's going to let the bishop come out. So we're playing sort of a natural developing move and holding back with this bishop on f1 so we can save time. And so when black takes, we'll be able to go all in one move, which black actually complies and takes on the very next move. Black wants to play c5, but they can't play c5 right now because it loses them a pawn. So for example, c takes, e takes, and now we just take on c5. And if you take the pawn back, which you shouldn't do, you should instead play here. And if we take with the queen, rook d1, or sorry, rook d8 comes, and that's not great for us. But if you take the pawn, now knight takes d5 just drops a pawn out of the gate, and this is not obviously not great. This pen is not really particularly dangerous. So white instead chooses to, sorry, black chooses to take here first. We take back with the bishop, getting this all out in one go. We're very happy about that. And now c5 comes, and we just castle. And this is a nice combative way to play. It was totally possible to just take the pawn, go into sort of a dry symmetrical position, and probably we were going to end up in a draw. But here, Gukesh takes on d4, and I really love the way that Anish plays from here on out. This is super instructive and exactly the kind of chess that people ought to be playing because he plays for the win here. Now, it's totally possible to play queen takes. It's possible to play knight takes, and just have that same sort of symmetrical position we were just looking at. But instead, knight to e4 happens. And I love this move. This is such a cool idea. The point is, we want to take back with the pawn and create an imbalance in the position, and we get this isolated queen pawn. Now, in an isolated queen pawn position, we want to keep more pieces on the board. And we're getting our knight to a really nice central square with tempo, making sure that this trade never happens. And yeah, I just like this a lot. Queen to e7 is what was played. Queen f5 is what the computer kind of wanted to do, but like I think this is a move only a computer could play. Like it seems ridiculous. Mostly just because this queen is totally surrounded by minor pieces. We go queen d3, and if black tries to get greedy and pick up an extra pawn, well now they're just like dead lost because we play a3, we kick the bishop, and now knight d6 comes, and we're hitting the queen, and we're just gonna pick the bishop up here. So I think it's pretty clear that like queen to e7 is far more natural move. And now we kick the bishop and we take the pawn. And this is nice because we stopped the bishop from coming back to this diagonal, and the bishop is just a little bit out of play here. And now rook to d8 comes, and now rook c2, which is the start of Anish's like prep. Yeah, in his interview after the event, he talked about this idea that he had, and that he was really happy that he got to play this in a game, and then it turned out. The point is that white wants to have a double the rooks on the e file, and I can't play this rook to e1 yet because, well, there's a bishop here. Now, you might say, well, why not just play b4? And this feels like a pretty natural idea, but we just kicked the bishop to b6, and we haven't made any progress towards getting our rooks where we want. But with rook to c2, we're already putting a rook on e2, and we've prepared to double our rooks, which is even more important. Bishop d7 is played. The point is that he's going to come out to c6 and have nice control over this d5 square, try to prevent d5 from us. And then he's going to follow up and put the knight on d7, and then maybe it can go to b6, come to d5 that way. And this is black's key plan, is that they want to try to defend the d5 square as much as they can, which is why the rook went to d8. And if they can control this square, then they can begin putting pressure on the pawn. So rook to e2, following with their idea. Both players follow. Now queen to c2. This is a nice move. We're preparing the queen to a nice active square. Perhaps we might have to put the rook on d1, depending on what happens. And now bishop to b6, saying, aha, I'm going to go ahead and get this pressure going. And Giri just totally ignores it and plays rook to e1. And this is such a sweet idea. The point is that you can't take this pawn, and as we'll look at that in a moment. He played king to h8 here. The best is probably to play bishop to d5. When we capture, you take back with the rook, and we play knight to c3, and black has lost control of d5 now. The rook's got to drop back, and now we get d5 in. You can't take. So, for example, say knight d7, we're going to take. You take with the rook, we take here. And, black's probably got really good chances to hold this, but it's uncomfortable. Only white's playing for an advantage. We have good control over the e5 square. This is a weak, isolated pawn. We're more active with our pieces. This rook hasn't found a way to get into the game yet. We definitely, white is for choice here, but this is definitely the best. If instead you try to grab this pawn, well, I'm going to spoil it for you, because the exact idea that got played in the game, and you can see the eval bar going nuts over here, is what happened. It would still work here. So king to h8 happens, and this move looks kind of weird, but it sort of has an idea. But it doesn't actually have an idea, because it doesn't stop anything. Here, knight to g5. That's like the point. I mean, we're threatening mate. This is a crazy looking move, because we can just take it, and then we're going to put a new knight there, right? But then if you put a new knight there, then it looks like that maybe we're going to play here. The point of getting the king off of this diagonal is, I'm sure Gukesh was expecting sacrifices on f7 when the bishop is lined up here, and he just wanted out of that. But there's a whole other world of sacrifices that he, I guess, didn't see or didn't appreciate, or maybe he'd already given up on life and just thought that the game was over. So takes, and now rook takes e6. We've sacked a knight, and then we just sacked a rook too. And you have to take this. If you don't take the rook, this is a lights out kind of situation. I mean, I don't even know what you play if you don't take it. You take, we take, and again, you have to take the rook. You've got to give up the queen. There's no good way to avoid giving up the queen. So, for example, just like queen f8, knight g5, game over. You can't stop mate. I mean, you can block with the pawn. I'm just going to take it, and then you're done. You can't stop mate. We have rook to e8 coming there. All kinds of huge problems. Let's just look at it. So g6, we take. What are you gonna play? We have a mate threat right here. How are you gonna stop it? Here, rook d2. Well, I have queen h5, and now what? Queen h6 is maybe the only idea. I mean, you can try to come here and step out of the check, but then this is just mate, because you block. Oh, sorry, you can't even block. It's a double check. Yeah, this is just mate on the board. So you have to take. You have to give up the queen. But I mean, black has a lot of pieces. I mean, they've got 3 minors and 2 rooks, and we've got a queen and 2 minors. So essentially, they've got 2 rooks and a minor for the queen, which is generally more than enough, except for not in this position. Bishop takes f3, makes sense. Got to stop knight confirming to g5, but it doesn't matter. We play queen to f5. And effectively, we've sacked now 2 knights and 2 rooks. to get this position. Now, of course, we get a queen in return, so we've given something. But like we're not really sacking the knight. We're gonna get this back. Our point is we're gonna play queen h3. This king totally boxed in. It's got nowhere to go. Absolutely nowhere. And this is a really tough move to meet. Bishop to e4 is really the only thing that prolongs the game at all. And we just grab it. And his point is he takes here with an attack against the queen. We don't have access to the h file, and we're threatening mate here. This is really not a big deal at all because we play queen to f3, and we want this move. And this is mate threatened on the board. And g4, the only way to prevent this. And now we play queen, and then we just drop the bishop here with check, and we're going to come back to c2. And resignation happened right here, forced resignation. We're covering this. We're threatening queen h8, which is just a mate. Let's take a look at that. So let's say 8-6, a move that does nothing. Well, now you just queen h8, the king comes forward. We just keep grabbing things, and then this is just mate on the board. Now, this is preventable. Like, you don't have to do this, but, like, you got to give up a rook. So, like, I mean, you got to play, like, knight c6 or something to defend this, but then you've just given a rook up for nothing. Yeah, and now you need to drop this rook back to defend this square, and I just take this. I'm going to take this guy. We're up tons of material. This bishop is defending the mate. This was a truly fascinating game, really instructive way of playing these isolated queen pawns positions. And any of you out there that are following the Chess Goals course for the D4, definitely pay attention to this game because this is the kind of thing that could come up in your game. And yeah, thanks a lot, guys. Hope you enjoyed this, and we'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.